Have you ever thought about language as a building? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do in this explainer. We are going to explore the architecture of how we all communicate, breaking down the blueprint we use to construct everything from simple sentences to our most complex ideas.
So what if language really did have a blueprint? When you start to see it that way, it stops being just a bunch of boring rules you had to memorize in school. Instead, it becomes this incredible toolkit. It's a system that we can all learn to use, not just correctly, but creatively.
You know, every great project starts with the right materials. And in language, our material is vocabulary. These aren't just words on a page. They're the raw materials, the actual bricks and mortar that form the foundation of everything we want to say and write.
So think of your vocabulary as your own personal workshop. The more high-quality tools you have at your disposal, words you really understand, the stronger and more impressive your linguistic creations are going to be.
Okay, but having the best materials is only half the battle. You also need to know how they all work together. So next, let's look at how words relate to their neighbors, which is all about making sure we choose the right material for the right spot in our structure.
First up, let's talk about synonyms. These are words with similar meanings. So instead of just using a basic word like happy, you could pick joyful, glad, or cheerful. Each one adds a unique shade of meaning, almost like a different texture. This is how you build with nuance. But, and this is a big one, synonyms can be a trap. Why? Because they're not always interchangeable. For example, you could call a bargain watch inexpensive, that's pretty neutral. But if you call it cheap, that implies it's poor quality. See? Context is absolutely everything, and picking the wrong word can totally derail your message. Now let's talk about the complete opposite, antonyms. These are words with opposing meanings, like hot and cold, or tall and short. Think of these as your go-to tools for creating sharp contrast. They make your arguments way clearer and your descriptions so much more vivid. And here's a little mistake we've probably all made at some point. We assume two words are opposites when they're really just describing different things. For instance, the real opposite of smooth isn't soft, it's rough. Being precise with your antonyms is such a simple way to make your language that much more powerful.
Okay, now for the really tricky ones, homonyms and homophones. Homonyms are spelled the same but mean different things, like a baseball bat and the animal bat. Homophones, on the other hand, sound the same but are spelled differently. Think two, and two. Honestly, mastering these is a small detail that makes a huge difference in how polished your writing looks. Okay, so we've gathered all our materials. Now for the really fun part, the construction itself. How are new words actually built? Well, language is a living, breathing thing that's constantly evolving, and we're about to see exactly how that happens. So we have four main ways we build words. We're going to start by adding prefixes and suffixes. Then we'll look at forming compound words, blending words together, and finally, how to completely convert a words class. Let's start building. First up, prefixes. Super simple concept. These are just little bits we add to the beginning of a word to completely change its meaning. Just take the word possible, slap the prefix M on the front, and boom, you've created its exact opposite. It's a simple but incredibly powerful modification. Suffixes work in a pretty similar way, but they get added to the end of a word. For instance, adding er to the verb teach turns it into the noun teacher. You're not just tweaking the meaning here, you're changing the word's entire job description. And this is actually a perfect example of that fourth method we mentioned, converting a word's class. It's where a word jumps from one category, like a verb, into a whole new one, like a noun. The key, of course, is choosing the right tool for the right job. It's not illegal, it's illegal. It's not unregular, it's irregular. It might seem like a small thing, but using the correct prefix or suffix is like using the right screw for the right material. It makes sure everything holds together properly. Next up is compounding, which is one of the most straightforward construction techniques out there. You just take two separate words, like sun and flower, join them together, and you've created a totally new concept, sunflower. It's a simple, elegant, and really powerful way our language grows. And then there's blending. This is language's creative shortcut. We take parts of two different words, like breakfast and lunch, and kind of squish them together to get brunch. It's efficient, it's fun, and it's how we get fantastic words like smog from smoke and fog. All right, our structure is up. But before we finish up, every good builder does a final inspection. We have to check our work for any common errors to make sure our language is solid, sound, and ready to go. So, be honest with yourself for a second. Are you making any of these common construction errors? Let's do a quick final check of some of the most common pitfalls out there. Okay, Let's just recap the 3 big pitfalls. First, mixing up those tricky homophones like there and there. Second, using a synonym in the wrong context. Remember, a high-quality watch might be inexpensive, but it's probably not cheap. And third, slapping on the wrong prefix or suffix, like saying unagreeable instead of disagreeable. Avoiding these simple errors will instantly make your communication so much stronger.
And that brings us to the end. We've looked at the blueprint, we've gone through the materials, and we've covered the construction techniques. We can now see language not as some big mystery, but as a toolkit. So the only question left is this. Now that you have the tools, what will you build?